Hey, what's up? It's Tuesday. I'm Jim here for The Rough Cuts, and today I'll be talking about my final review for The Rough Cuts, which will be Forrest Gump. Now, Forrest Gump is a film that most people really like, and I am not one of those people, I guess. You follow Forrest Gump throughout not his entire life, but I guess Jenny's whole life. You see history from basically the baby boomer perspective, from the 50s till about, I guess, the 80s. So we go through everything, and Forrest has a lot of interactions with famous people. Elvis stays at his mom's boarding house, and Elvis, whose voice is actually played by, uncredited by Kurt Russell, and how Forrest came up with the dance because he was in his leg braces, whatever. He goes in the army, he meets Bubba, he meets Lieutenant Dan, he meets 3 separate presidents, LBJ, Nixon, Kennedy. He also meets John Lennon. And those scenes in particular, and they use these, what were considered cutting edge at the time, but now are like technology we use on Jay Leno uses on skits for the Today Show. A lot of the technology in this film I remember was considered really cutting edge, and when you see a special on special effects, they'd always show you that scene in the giant, you know, near the Washington Monument, how they created all those crowds and how they did all this stuff, or how they took Lieutenant Dan's legs away and stuff in the film. He had like green screen socks on or whatever. There's a lot of special effects you just frankly don't notice because it's movie magic. Lieutenant Dan's legs, that works incredibly well. But all the news footage looks pretty dated and horrible. It sticks out like a sore thumb because you instantly are like, I mean, you can tell it's not JFK, you can tell it's not Nixon. The John Lennon scene, I think, is one of the worst of the entire film, where he's just saying lyrics of Imagine. I'm not sure when I hear Forrest narration, is this like what Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis think of me? Because that, like, there's a lot of repetition in this movie, and I don't mind repetition. Repetition can be really funny when you have the narrator saying something and then the character says the exact thing right after it, but this film did it so many times. I don't really get the structure of this movie because it's certainly not really 3-act. It seems to be really interested in hitting all these cornerstones of history, but in a really disorganized way, because it's not like it hits on all these cultural landmarks. It's just kind of like whatever ones they kind of felt like doing. It's really long. I mean, I think I would have liked it. I think one of the things, like when he leaves the park bench, I kind of, even though I didn't really like the narration and everything, it's like they're sticking to one thing and then they take this hard left, which I don't really understand why he couldn't have just stayed on the park bench. Like, he's right near to where she was. He didn't really need to take the bus. I'm like, are you really? Like, why were we here? It was just such a wasted idea, like, just kind of stupid. And it does feel like a baby boomer's perspective on their life, because it's like, you know, they had all these, there was the 60s, the 70s, Vietnam, and then in the 80s, it's not as interesting, probably because most of them had kids. So why would we dwell on the 80s? Like anything happened there, it's a little too self-important. And I think that's something about 90s films who kind of dress up like they're classic Hollywood movies, but they're not classic Hollywood movies. I think it's the influence of Spielberg used in a completely wrong way. I really am a fan of Robert Zemeckis, actually. He did a run of films between, well, it was like Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Back to the Future 2. He was a really great blockbuster filmmaker in the 80s. The joke in the first Back to the Future, where I think it's the guy's on the phone and he hears Michael J. Fox playing guitar and his brother's Chuck Berry, or his cousin's Chuck Berry, and it's really funny because he goes back and he ends up inventing rock and roll. Haha. That's, you know, and I think that's a good scene. But there are too many moments like that where people go, oh, I came up with this idea because Forrest rubbed his face in a t-shirt, so that's where we got the smiley face. Like, I mean, I know it's like a joke, I know it's not real, but after a while it's like you're insulting my intelligence and it's just getting stupid. I liked it when I was a kid, but it's like in the mid-90s, I feel like this is like Hootie and the Blowfish. Everybody loved Hootie and the Blowfish, but who really wants to listen to Hootie and the Blowfish now? And Forrest Gump, I think, is left over from a forgotten era. There's a lot of stuff I like about nostalgia, and there's a lot of films that I look at from previous eras, and I really like to think about, wow, I wish I could have lived in the 30s, the 70s, even go back to the 90s or something when I watch it. And Forrest Gump doesn't remind me of that. It reminds me of how crap the 90s were. It reminds me of stuff like that Robin Williams movie where he kind of rips off Life is Beautiful. It reminds me of things like Life is Beautiful, like that kind of that sentimental, these very sentimental, hokey, hallmarky movies with an overbearing score. Everything is put up to 11 and set to so obvious there's no way you cannot get anything in this movie. As a point, I felt like this film just washed over me in a way that I didn't really like. Sometimes I like that from a blockbuster, but the way his narration, I felt like, was like super insulting to me as a viewer. I'm not really into sappy drama that leaves me thinking about the world so much. I'd much rather watch something like Ikiru than watch something like Forrest Gump, which just kind of coddles me through history in a way that made me feel like I was 12, you know. And I liked this movie a lot more when I was 12, and a lot more when I didn't know as much about filmmaking. And maybe it's kind of like ignorance is bliss, and it's better. And when you don't know, like, you know, what 3-act structure is, and you don't know who Bergman is, maybe you would like this movie, but I feel like I've gone too far, and so I can't really like that. So this is the final Rough Cuts review I'm doing. I'm basically leaving because I have my own channel where I review movies, which I've all, you know, it's in the info box below. I produce a lot more work there, and to be honest, like, if I'm the only one who's going to be here, I might as well just do it on my own channel, because this is a collaboration channel. I know Shanti's in China, and the Wisest Wizards say they're going to come back or something. I was probably going to leave at the end of the year originally, but I just feel like now is the time to go. You know, I really did enjoy being here. I still think my best review is the first one I did, The Public Enemy. I think that's the best one I did for the Rough Cuts. Master of the Universe, I think my earlier ones were maybe better. I like my John Carpenter reviews. I will continue to review every movie that John Carpenter directed on my own channel. I'm probably going to start in mid-July and go until at least Halloween. And with Halloween on Halloween, I need to do my own thing. I think it was time to go for me, but I'm still making movie reviews. I will probably make a movie review a couple days after this, and we'll continue doing them on my own channel. So if you like what I'm doing, just subscribe to my channel. I really enjoyed all your comments. There's a couple people who comment like every time I put out a video on the Rough Cuts, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate Chauncey for giving me a chance. I'm not mad at anybody. If you like everybody else on this channel, just stick around, keep following it. I'm gonna keep following it. I don't think I'm gonna come back though. I like Adam Stanchek. I like that guy. I wish he had kept it up. I liked him. And the Wisest Wizards and Chauncey. I liked all those guys. Anyway, so subscribe to the Rough Cuts if you haven't already, because who knows? Tomorrow someone could make a video. I'll leave this playlist up. I will have a playlist on my own channel of all the Rough Cut reviews I did. So if you want to check out any of the older ones, then you can. Follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, and potentially VHX. And follow Earl Barrett Holloway's Tumblr. He does the picture at the beginning and the end of this video, and it was very nice to do it. He has a comic on squidcomic.com. You can look at his comic. He made it with Microsoft Paint. It's really cool. Just click. I'll put a link for that in this video description.